Welcome into the Wednesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Joe Rexrode out on vacation once again. He will be back with us next week. Adam Vingan back in the house another day, 3 days in a row. Adam, how we doing?
I'm good. Not only 3 days in a row, I think this is 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
That I've appeared on the station in some capacity. And guess what? Next week will be 5.
It will be 5.
I will be back next week. Me and Keyser doing a couple shows next week.
How about that?
After the holiday. But I'm happy to be back with you, Robby. It's been a very exciting week. Plenty to talk about. I'm looking forward to our conversation with Jonathan Marchessault, who will be joining us at 8:40.
He will.
First time Marchessault will speak to us here in Nashville. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And of course, last time I filled in for Joe, Kaharski was also on vacation.
He was.
He is not on vacation this time. I'm looking forward to spending some time with Paul.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's looking forward to spending time with me, but I feel like he seems to not like Nick very much.
Wow.
So, I mean, is that not true? You
What's
guys,
up, brother?
you guys,
A little feud?
You guys have a little feud, don't you?
I don't think it's a feud.
I don't think it's a feud either.
No, I don't think it's a
You
feud.
think it's some tough love?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
That's fair.
You know
Tough
what?
love.
What's tough love is Robby telling me what I can and can't wear to the hockey rink yesterday.
Well, I
What'd you wear?
consider you to be
warm clothing.
a tough individual. And when you show up with a shirt on, a sweatshirt on, and then a jacket on the sweatshirt on top of that, it was a little disappointing.
I mean,
Yes.
considering the heat index is 100 plus degrees
Yeah.
outside. And I get it.
Meanwhile-
I shed it pretty quickly.
I am not a cold person. Short sleeve shorts, baby. That's what I did in the hockey rink yesterday. A little disappointed in you. I expect better today.
I'll be
Is that gonna
better.
happen?
That is the plan.
All right. Okay. We'll see what happens. We got a lot to get into on the program. As Adam mentioned, Jonathan Marchessault, Predators forward, will join us at 8:40 today on the program. Paul Kuharski, paulkuharski.com, will be with us starting right around 7:30. So looking forward to PK a little bit later in the show, taking your thoughts all show long. Again, a reminder, as Chase McCabe, our fearless leader, put it out there yesterday, we are in the process of switching a service as it relates to our text line. So taking a little bit longer than we thought. So again, today, hit up our phone line. Give us your phone calls, 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your phone calls all show long. You can hit us up in the YouTube chat as well. We would greatly appreciate that. Had a lot of participation that way yesterday. We'll get into a lot of different things throughout the show today. Get into some football with PK a little bit later in the program as well. Adam, I want to start back on the Preds front. So we're going to have Marchessault on a little bit later today. They've got development camp going on right now. And I think obviously the major work of the offseason for Barry Trotz and the Predators is done at this point after the spending spree that they went on day one in free agency. One thing that we started to discuss yesterday that I think is really interesting as it relates to how the Predators have done this and the way that they've attracted some pretty big name guys. Like, think about last year. Ryan O'Reilly kind of came out of nowhere. Like, O'Reilly was in Toronto. They really wanted him back in Toronto. And even if he didn't go back to Toronto, I think the general thinking was, well, Ryan O'Reilly is going to go to a place where he feels like he can contend. And then the Predators signed him, and it was like, wow, okay. Barry Trotz landed Ryan O'Reilly. And we've talked about the contract. Like, my initial reaction to the O'Reilly contract was 4 years. I don't know at this stage of his career, but they got Ryan O'Reilly. And, Ryan O'Reilly showed up, and from the second he showed up, he started talking about, well, why can't we contend? It's clear like the qualities off the ice and the game still on the ice. It was pretty attractive for Barry Trotz to land him, and he did. Ryan O'Reilly, now Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault. You've got Brady Shea on the back end. Like, these are some pretty big name guys that the Predators have been able to land the last couple of years here. How much credit do we give Barry Trotz for that? Other than the obvious of just offering the contract. A lot of people offer contracts, but turning this city and the franchise into a landing spot and a destination. He's talked about that for basically since he took over the job. And so far, the returns on that are pretty good. How much of that do you think specifically has to do with Barry Trotz, and either his ability to connect with these guys, his ability to understand exactly kind of what they're looking for being a former coach. How much credit do we give Trotz in terms of the ability to, for lack of better words, close the deal like he has the last couple of years?
I think you have to give him a fair amount of credit, obviously, other than, as you said, being the one to give them the money that they're looking for. But Barry Trotz has a sterling reputation, one of the greatest coaches in NHL history. And the reason why he was such a great coach is because he was able to relate to many different types of players. He could relate to a superstar. He could relate to a grinder. He could relate to the minor leaguer who goes up and down. That's what made him so popular with his players as a coach. And we hear Barry Trotz talk frequently, whether we're listening to his interviews with Jared during the season or whenever he makes himself available to reporters, which is a lot. He's a very convincing guy. You listen to Barry Trotz talk, and it's hard not to believe what he's saying. He's a genuine person. I've always felt that way. And I imagine that personality is what lends itself to attracting players like Ryan O'Reilly, like Steven Stamkos, like Jonathan Marchessault. You can throw Luke Shen and Gus Nyquist in there as well, guys who have been around the block. So, and I think that was always going to be one of Barry's biggest strengths as a general manager, was his ability to understand players because of his coaching experience. That was something that I felt always would give him a leg up, despite the fact that he is so inexperienced as a general manager. Just because he understands the dynamics of what a dressing room is. I mean, we saw it last year when he and the Predators made the decision to trade Ryan Johansson and buy out Matt Duchene. I mean, Barry Trotz clearly felt that Johansson and Duchene, despite what they were able to do with the Predators over different stretches of time, he thought that he needed a different type of leadership in his dressing room. And I feel like only a coach who spent decades in dressing rooms would know that better than someone who has been primarily a general manager. So I do think that Barry Trotz played a big role in convincing the free agents that signed the other day and others last year to come to Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to just throw the money around, right? Like when you have $26 million in cap space like they had heading into all this, clearly you've got room to operate there. So obviously you have to have that in order to enter into these conversations. Like as much as guys, I'm sure respect Barry Trotz, if Barry Trotz had $1 million in cap space, he's not landing Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos. So we all understand that. But I do think his ability to communicate, like Brunette got on with Stillman the other day and basically just said, he was like, yeah, Barry got in there and closed the deal. Like he got in there, he closed the deal. He had a vision that he preached to those guys, and those guys bought in. And to a degree, every general manager has that vision, and I think it is important to be able to communicate that effectively in a way that players buy into it. But I'm with you. Like, Barry Trotz has been getting players to buy into things for 30 years at this point. So I do think it's a little different. Like, and I think that's a strength of his that from the moment he took the job, we talked about how that could end up kind of working itself out for the Predators. There's a lot of things when Barry Trotz took the job I just didn't know about, like how, in terms of scouting, like how great are they going to be in that area? How aggressive is he going to be in the draft? Is he going to be willing to maybe take some risk, which he talked about from the moment he got here? In terms of contract negotiations, like, is he kind of a hardball guy? Is he a guy that is going to sign some big long-term deals that may age badly at the end of them? Like, it's just a whole lot about him we didn't know as a general manager. But I do think his ability as a communicator has separated him for a long time. And again, it's not the be-all, end-all. But, I mean, think about the names they've signed. Beyond just the money part of it, Ryan O'Reilly, a Conn Smythe winner. Jonathan Marchessault, a Conn Smythe winner. Steven Stamkos speaks for himself. I mean, there's some big name guys that have come here the last couple of years. When really before that, Adam, as we've talked about, the previous 24, 25 years, you can count on one hand how many big name guys have actively chosen to sign here. And it's interesting to me that it's starting to happen now in waves here with the Predators with those big name guys.
Barry Trotz had the luxury of working for 3 really good to great general managers. We know about David Boyle, and it helped that Barry Trotz got a crash course in being a general manager by coming to the organization a couple of seasons ago and observing and working with David Boyle before Boyle retired. Lou Lamoriello, Hockey Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Brian McClellan in Washington has been a really good general manager, constructed a Stanley Cup winning team that Barry Trotz coached. And Barry was able to take things from each of them. But I think one thing that we've always known about Barry Trotz is he's his own man. So I think working with Boyle, Lamoriello, and McClellan certainly helped, and being part of winning organizations. But I think the fact that he also came into this, with open eyes, and didn't have, I feel like with general managers who have been doing it for a long time, you got to get stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
I mean, David Boyle was a general manager, for 30 consecutive years, basically. And you could sort of predict the kind of things that David Boyle was going to do because you had a long track record. And it's easy, and David Boyle would admit this, it's easy to be, get in that comfort zone, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, and stick with what you know. Barry Trotz, the fact that he's coming in here, or he came in here with no managerial experience, he's sort of learning on the fly and, taking risks. And I think that's important. I think if Barry Trotz would have played this slowly, like he sat back and wasn't as aggressive as he was, I don't think anyone would blame him because it's the beginning of his managerial career. But he didn't do that. He came in guns blazing. I mean, the first official acts he had were trading Ryan Johansson and buying out Matt Duchene. Like, he didn't sign some guy to a league minimum deal or something like that. So right from the jump, you knew that he was all about that business. And I appreciate that. I think the fact that he came in as a rookie GM and was immediately aggressive, I think that was the right way to go about it. Like I said, I wouldn't have blamed him if he would have slow played it and just said, I'm going to sit back and observe. And, I think what prevented him from doing that was that he came in when he did. Yeah. Now, if he had just come in, right before the draft or something like that and didn't have those few months working with David Boyle, maybe he does it that way. So perhaps it's because he had that GM 101 class with David Boyle, maybe that allowed him to get, fast track it to where he is now.
We have some fan mail on my personal text line. Our fan Joe Rexrode and intern Brennan traveling to Virginia tells us to entertain them. Also says Paul Kuharski, a big baby in general. This is from our fan Joe Rexrode.
I smoke weed constantly.
Thank you, Nick.
I mean, who am I to judge?
Safe travels to Virginia. We'll take all your thoughts. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. How much credit should Barry Trotz get for his ability to convince some of these guys to come here and to play in Nashville? More on that coming up. We got The Choice Is Yours coming up at 6:30. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, we are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. The choice is yours. Coming up at 6:30. As always, we encourage your participation. Today on the YouTube chat, normally on the text line. We'll get that figured out at some point. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Discussing the Barry Trotz factor as it relates to his ability to woo some of these big-name free agents. We'll have Jonathan Marchessault on our program a little bit later today, coming up at 8:40, so looking forward to that. So, I mean, the buy-in has to be there from the players. I think we've seen that to this point. Everybody makes a big deal of the no state income tax part of this, and this is a big conversation in the NHL right now. Like, is it fair? Is it something that needs to be looked at in the next CBA? So, like, the Florida teams obviously can take advantage of that. Dallas down in Texas, the Predators here in Nashville, Vegas can take advantage of that. And those teams have been very active in free agency. Those teams have signed a lot of players. So that's kind of its own separate part of this whole thing, is like, how much easier does it make Barry Trotz's job to have the no state income tax on his side? And is that going to be something that the NHL tries to take a look at and adjust in some way as they move forward? I don't know. I don't really know what you're going to do about that, but we'll see what happens on that front. But there are plenty of advantages as Barry Trotz has laid out here. Like, Barry Trotz hasn't shied away from that. He's talked about there is no state income tax here. It is a good place to raise your family. And he's been kind of laying the groundwork and preaching that and getting that message out there from the moment he took over the job of, like, why would you not want to come play here? So it's been interesting to see his approach that way. I just think most Predators fans are surprised that he's been able to kind of turn this thing around and ramp this up in free agency so quickly. Like, David Poile for so long just wasn't overly aggressive in free agency. It just wasn't the approach that he took. So this has been a pretty wild couple of years now, where the Predators were more aggressive in free agency than really anybody thought they would be last year. And then now, obviously, the winners of the day in free agency with Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea.
I don't think it's a coincidence that 4 of the past 5 Stanley Cup winners are from tax-free states. Tampa Bay twice, Vegas, and Florida.
Yep.
I don't think that's a coincidence. And my friend Steve Wino of the Associated Press wrote a story about this the other day, which I thought was interesting. And he looked at Sam Reinhart specifically. So Sam Reinhart re-signed with the Panthers. His average salary per year, $8.625 million.
Yep.
According to Wino, Reinhart will owe $3.15 million in taxes in Florida. He would pay $1.1 million more in California, $1.5 million more in New York, and $1.4 million more in Toronto. And later in the story, he spoke to like a tax consultant who works with athletes. And that consultant said that the Rangers or Islanders would have had to offer a contract exceeding $88 million for Reinhart to net the same amount as he did in his $69 million contract with the Panthers.
Yep.
Like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal in terms of the cap hit and what it takes to be competitive. So I don't think it's, I mean, look, so teams, there are 6 teams in the NHL that have that advantage: Nashville, Florida, Tampa, Dallas, Vegas, and Seattle. We always forget about Seattle, but Nashville, Florida, Tampa, Dallas, Vegas, and Seattle. That's just an advantage that those teams have. And I don't think it's fair to penalize them.
I agree.
For living in a state with no state income tax. We've talked about this. Like, there are plenty of players where the allure of playing in New York City, playing at Madison Square Garden, playing for an historic franchise like the New York Rangers, that means something to them.
Same thing with Canadian markets. Like, it's not like no Canadian teams yesterday and the day before didn't sign free agents. Like, there are plenty of them that were active.
Exactly. Like Artemi Panarin. When Artemi Panarin became a free agent and left Columbus, I mean, it was known for a while based on many reports, that he was going to play for the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
Because he wanted that experience. So, Nashville can't sell the same experience as New York City in terms of the franchise's history and playing at the world's most famous arena. They can't sell that, but they can sell your money going a lot further living in Tennessee than it would in New York or Canada or California. And that's an advantage, Barry Trotz can use. And I don't think, and the other general managers in those states can use. And I don't think it would be right for the NHL, to try to level the playing field, because this is what sports is. It's competitive.
Yep. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Donovan in Texas. Donovan, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, what's up, boys? Thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to shout out. So I've been a Preds fan since 2015, and Adam, your work originally was a big reason I got into the Preds and a big reason I was able to follow them as much as I do now. So I want to thank you for that. I remember I'm a relatively newer Preds fan. So I remember back when we signed Matt Duchene, how excited I was. Looking back at that compared to what has happened in the last couple of days, I mean, night and day difference, obviously. But I just wanted to get your opinion on, with having Trotz in the position now and how aggressive he's been, do you have any concerns with kind of the mentality he has long-term for the franchise? And what do you think? Obviously, it's a great time to be a Preds fan, but long-term, do you have any worries about making these big splashes, signing these big, long contracts?
Yeah.
Just wanted to get your thoughts about that, and love the show, boys. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Donovan. Appreciate it. First off, very nice things to say about you.
Thank you for the kind words, Donovan. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that's an interesting question. Do you have long-term concerns with what Barry Trotz has done, the approach that he's taken here? I don't think it's a stretch to say, Adam, that by like the 5th year of Jonathan Marchessault's contract and maybe the 4th of Stamkos's contract, like those couple of years there, it could get pretty hairy, right? I mean, we talked yesterday about a 2 or 3 year window to win a championship. That's kind of what I'm operating under right now. If you're the Predators, like, Saros is signing an 8-year deal, and that doesn't even kick in until next year. So, I mean, your hope would be in 4 years, he's still pretty darn good. Otherwise, that contract is going to be a disaster if he's not pretty good at that point. But I think it's certainly possible that like 4 or 5 years from now, they're not very good, just based on the amount of money that they've laid out here and the age that some of these guys are going to be. I mean, think about it, even Roman Josi. Like, Roman Josi looks like he's ageless out there, and his game is still at his top level. But like 4 years from now, when he's 37, 38 years old, what's that going to look like? Like, how good's he going to be? I think he's got 4 years left on his deal. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these contracts age. Now, I think the counter to that would be, well, if you win, if you go on some deep runs the next couple of years, then who really cares, right? I mean, I always remember having like this discussion because people always used to bring up the Blackhawks, right? Like, well, the Blackhawks have been bad for a long time.
They were going exactly where I was going.
And it's like, well, yeah, the Blackhawks have been bad for a long time. They also went all in and won 3 championships. So who cares?
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. You could say the same thing about the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings are back in the playoffs every year, but for a while they weren't. But they won 2 Stanley Cups in 3 years, right?
That is correct.
So, so when you do that, you will take the pain if you have a championship or championships to show for it. And one thing that is important, and I think we talked about this earlier this week, is that the Predators signed all of these players without giving up any assets other than cap space. They have not mortgaged the future by signing Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea.
For sure.
They just gave out cap space. So it's not like you had to trade for one of them and give up a high-end prospect or first-round pick. That definitely helps. And the other thing is, we've seen it. I think we've seen it this week with two of the players that the Predators acquired, especially in Vegas. I mean, Vegas had, Vegas, it was George McPhee, and now it's Kelly McCrimmon in that GM chair. They are ruthless.
Yeah.
Like, there are players. Think about all of the players that the Golden Knights have had that were big parts of their organization, that as soon as an opportunity arose to get someone big, someone better, they cut bait. There was no emotional attachment. I think the one everybody thinks of is Marc-Andre Fleury, right? Marc-Andre Fleury was the original face of that franchise, played a big role in the growth of hockey there. And when he was no longer useful to them, they let him go.
Yep.
And I think if Barry Trotz were to develop that reputation, and I guess you could say he kind of already has now, to be clear, he didn't sign Ryan Johansson. He didn't sign Matt Duchene. So there was no emotional attachment. But Duchene and Johansson made a lot of money. They were important members of the team. And he traded Johansson. He basically gave Johansson away, and he cut Matt Duchene. And if Barry Trotz is going to develop that sort of ruthless, Vegas-esque mindset, I don't mind that at all. I mean, that's the cost of winning.
Yep.
You can't get too emotionally attached to your players, which is something that I think David Poile, by and large, did. Now, he did trade Shea Weber, but I think he stuck to his guns a little bit too long on certain guys. And I think that's natural.
Yeah.
But if Barry Trotz is going to be a successful GM, I think he has to take a page out of the Golden Knights' playbook, which we just saw with Jonathan Marchessault. Marchessault meant everything to that franchise. He holds every major franchise record. And Kelly McCrimmon, their GM, said he wanted 5 years. We weren't going to do that.
Yep.
And sorry, like, you meant everything to us. You helped us win a championship. You were the MVP of that championship run. We're not paying you for 5 years.
Right.
Like, and I think if Barry Trotz is going to develop that mindset, I'm here for it. I think that's how you have to be to win in this league.
Coming up next, it's time for The Choice Is Yours. We'll have 2 sports questions, 2 America questions that I've come up with in honor of July the 4th. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
or that, or that.
We all have choices to make.
Or that, or that.
Like right now.
Or that.
It's The Choice Is Yours, built by Jared Companies. You have a choice, so when you have a need for site and utility work, fire protection, concrete, and asphalt services, the choice is simple. It's Jared Companies. For more, visit jaredcompaniesinc.com. The choice is yours. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is that time of the week. Time for The Choice Is Yours here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll take your participation. If you want to weigh in on our phone line, YouTube chat, The Choice Is Yours. You can check it out every Wednesday morning at 6:30 here on the program. I am in the questions chair this week. I have 2 sports questions. I have 2 American questions that also relate to sports in some way. Would we like to begin with sports or America?
Merca.
Okay. In honor of the 4th of July, your favorite American sports team of all time. Could be, and I'm not talking professional sports. I'm not talking about college football or anything. I'm talking about representing America. Your favorite American sports team of all time. What will it be?
Keezer, why don't you go first?
I was going to go to Robby first.
Okay, go to Robby first.
I got to
first.
think.
My favorite American sports team of all time. For me, now keep in mind, I was not alive, I don't think, when the Dream Team played in 92. Okay. I don't think I had been born yet. I was born in 92, but I don't think I had quite come around yet. So the Dream Team is not my answer. You remember the Redeem Team in 08? They had lost in the Olympics in 04 in Athens. And the Redeem Team with like LeBron, Kobe was the main player. You had Dwayne Wade, that was, I think, their leading scorer throughout that. I mean, the team was nuts. And some of the debate then turned into, would you rather have the Dream Team or the Redeem Team? And most people say the Dream Team. But the Redeem Team, my favorite American sports team of all time.
And you know what? I was going to say the exact same thing.
Was it?
Yep. The Redeem Team.
They were good.
The 2008 U.S. men's Olympic basketball team finished, what, bronze, you said? In 2004, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, finished in third.
Very disappointing.
Very disappointing. Coached by, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the greatest basketball coach that ever was, Mike Krzyzewski.
Oh, boy.
But yes, the Redeem Team, great roster for the Redeem Team. Quickly, Carlos Boozer, Jason Kidd, LeBron James, Darren Williams, Michael Redd, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, Chris Bosh, Chris Paul, Tayshaun Prince, and Carmelo Anthony.
It's pretty good.
Pretty solid team. I thought you were about to go with the Dream Team, so I was like, okay, I'll go with the Redeem Team. So we're both
we're
both going with the Redeem Team.
Had I been alive in the Dream Team, I probably would have, but I was not. Nick Keezer, your favorite American sports team of all time.
I would like to refer to Colin. Colin wanted to share a good one.
Okay.
Michael Phelps in 2008.
Not a team.
That's not.
But he's not a team. He wanted to
We're
refer.
We're getting to actually an athlete part of it later, but that is not a team.
Okay. Very cool. This is the old cliche for me, but it's a go-to. Y'all picked great teams. I love those teams from basketball, but I'm going to go with the Miracle on Ice.
Okay.
Because
I figured somebody would.
I watched that constantly growing up. The quotes live in my head rent-free. I could say a few of them anytime, but that's always my go-to.
Okay. I figured somebody would say that. All right. Switching over to actual sports. Pred's question for you. You can take the 2017-18 Nashville Predators roster. I'm not talking about the result. I'm talking about the roster. Or you can take this one. Which one are you taking? The 2017-18 Nashville Predators roster. Or you can take this one. Which one are you taking?
Nick, do you have an answer off the top of your head? Is he even listening?
I was wanting to look at the roster, but I'll go on a whim. I would say this roster.
Okay.
Quite frankly. Now that's given Stamkos without one of his Stanley Cups. So doesn't really matter that much, but I really like the pedigree, and they would be younger at that point too.
No, I'm talking about right now. Which one would you
rather?
If you could pick one heading into this season,
not head to head.
Not head to head. Like, what would you take? Would you take 17-18, or would you take this one?
Yeah, I still think it's this one.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think so too. Now I like the defense on the 17-18 team better.
I would say so.
Your Yossi, Subban, Ekholm, Ellis combination, but their leading scorer in 2017-18 in terms of points was Philip Forsberg.
Yep.
And he had 64 points in 67 games.
Yep.
I feel more confident about this team's ability to score than I do that one, despite the fact that that team was the best team in the league that season. So I will take this year's team versus that year's team.
I mean, I will too, but I think it's basically just because of the entertainment factor. Like, I mean, that team was fun to watch, but Stamkos, Marchessault, Forsberg, yeah, sign me up. I'll take that. Now, I think there's a pretty good chance that the results in terms of regular season success are probably not going to be as good for this team as it was for that team, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, back to America. Your favorite non-Big Four sport American athlete. So no football, no baseball, no hockey, no basketball. Your favorite non-Big Four sport American athlete.
I think I know where Adam might go with this.
Do you?
Ryan Lochte.
Ryan Lochte?
Not
No,
what I was
I'm-
going to say.
I'm joking. I'm going to keep it in the Olympics.
Okay.
Because I feel like that's easier for me to decipher in terms of favorite. I've always enjoyed. I'm going to keep it in swimming.
Okay.
I've always made time to watch Katie Ledecky.
She's pretty good.
When she is competing at the Olympics, and she will compete at the Olympics once again this month, right?
She will win.
She will win 7 gold medals for Katie Ledecky, 4th Olympic appearance. I'm not a huge swimming is not the sport like I typically will sit down and watch during the Olympics.
Yep.
Obviously, I watch a lot of basketball during the Summer Olympics. I also like the more obscure Olympic sports like handball.
I agree.
I like watching those sports.
Water polo.
But I always enjoy watching Katie Ledecky. Great representative of the United States.
Nick Keyser, your favorite American non-Big Four sport athlete.
This is tough.
I mean, you just said one
I did
4 minutes ago.
but it's not mine.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not mine. I think when I was growing up, I watched Shaun White quite a bit.
Okay. That's a good
I
one.
did. He was pretty electric, had a great quote usually in his interviews. But
Mountain Dew, baby.
yeah. I'm disappointed Adam did not pick Joey Chestnut.
I was about to say, were you
Well-
upset that I didn't pick Joey Chestnut?
Is he an athlete?
I mean,
He does
I
have
guess.
to. He does have to train, and you
Yeah.
know what? The hot dog eating contest tomorrow is not going to be anywhere near as exciting because he's not in it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just throwing the question out there. Is that athletic? Like, is he an athlete? I don't know. Probably.
All I'm saying is that you would think, right, that the big fat guys would be good at eating.
You would think.
They're typically not.
You would think.
Like, I remember watching some sort of, I don't know if it was a documentary, but it was some sort of thing with Eater X, I believe is his name. He's like
Sure.
He's regularly in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. He usually finishes in like 2nd or 3rd place.
Okay.
And the guy was like ripped. Like there is some, like, it actually
That
helps
just
to
doesn't
be
seem right.
in shape when you're a competitive eater, I guess. But yes, I mean, Joey Chestnut speaks for himself. He's an American icon.
Yeah.
And America won't be the same tomorrow with him not gorging on hot dogs. But remember, Labor Day, Chestnut versus Kobayashi on Netflix.
Get excited.
Get excited for Labor Day.
That's right. I mean, my answer at the moment is probably Scotty Scheffler. He's playing golf. But all time, I'll go Phelps. Phelps, I mean, look, Phelps, watching him in the Olympics used to be like an event. Like, people got excited to watch Michael Phelps. So I'll go with Phelps. All right, last sports question. How many Predators will have 70-plus points this year? How many members of the Nashville Predators will have 70 or more points this season?
I'm going to go with 3.
Okay. Who are they?
Ooh, who would they be? I would say Roman Yossi.
Okay.
Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly.
Okay. They had
So you're not saying either
Stamkos or Marchessault?
You don't
Yeah,
think
that's
Stamkos
tough.
or Marchessault?
I couldn't. Yeah, that's early. I would like to put Stamkos as my 3rd, not Ryan O'Reilly.
Okay. Well, for reference, last year they had 3, almost 4. So Forsberg had 94, Yossi had 85, Nyquist had 75, Ryan O'Reilly had 69. So he was right on the edge. Adam, how many Nashville Predators have 70-plus points?
I'm also going to say 3. I'll say Roman Yossi, Philip Forsberg, and Steven Stamkos.
Okay. I'll go 4. I'll go Yossi, Forsberg, Stamkos, and I will go. I'm deciding between two guys. I'll go O'Reilly. I think he gets there.
So we all
With
think
the firepower
we all
that
think
he's
that
playing.
Marchessault falls short of 60 points.
70 points.
70 points, I'm sorry.
I don't know that has Marchessault has he ever gotten to 70 points?
He had 69 last season.
Right.
He had 75 in
Okay.
Vegas's first
So,
season.
yeah, he can do it. That'd be a heck of a year.
Since he had 75, he's had 59, 47, 44, 66, 57, 69.
If the power play goes nuts, you could see 5 guys maybe. I don't know.
Maybe so. We'll see. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Kind of building off one of those questions that we just asked. Is this the best roster in Nashville Predators history? Is it the most talented team in Predators history? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com will be with us right around 7:30 today here on the program. Jonathan Marchessault, new Predators forward, will be with us at 8:40, so looking forward to that conversation with him. Taking your thoughts on our phone line, 615-737-1025. Our text line still down, going through a change of text line servicing options, taking a little bit longer than we thought. So hit up our phone line today, 615-737-1025. So kind of building off that question, and the choice is yours. I asked you if you'd rather have the 2017-18 roster or this one that is currently together on paper now after Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea come over. Which one would you take? It leads me to this question. Is this the most talented Predators roster of all time? It's interesting to think about because there's a couple, I think 17-18 was a good roster. I think 06-07 is probably the one that's in direct competition with this one. And I don't think there's any question that the 06-07 roster was deeper than this one. But is it more talented? That's interesting. So for those who don't know, 06-07, especially after the trade deadline, they had traded for Peter Forsberg. They already had Paul Kariya. They had Steve Sullivan. They had Alex Radulov. They had a young Ryan Suter, a young Shea Weber. They had Kimmo Timonen, Jason Arnott, JP Dumont, Scott Hartnell. It is a pretty loaded group. And you can make the argument still, I think, even though that one got put out in the first round and they've had a team that's gone to the Cup final and a team that won a President's Trophy, I think you could still make the argument that was, quote unquote, their best team. It just did not go well in the playoffs, and they ran into some injuries and all that stuff. So, Adam, with that kind of that in the backdrop, I think that team and 17-18 are probably the most talented teams that they've had. How does this one stack up now with the additions of Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea specifically?
Okay, here's a bit of a trivia question for you.
Okay.
So the Predators have had 3 40-goal scorers. They've had, 2, but it's happened 3 times.
Correct.
Philip Forsberg has scored 40 goals twice, and Matt Duchene scored 40 goals once.
Yeah.
Do you know how many 40-goal seasons Steven Stamkos has in his career? After last season, which he had 40 goals?
Let's see here. He's played, I believe, 16 years. So I'm going to say 11.
You say 11?
Yeah.
Keyser said 7?
7.
It is 7.
Okay.
Something tells me Keyser already knew that.
Okay.
Maybe.
He has 7 40-goal seasons by himself. And this is not he had 7 40-goal seasons 8 years ago.
Right.
He had a 40-goal season last year. This past season, he had 40 goals.
And keep in mind, a couple of those seasons were shortened.
Yes.
Either via lockout or via COVID.
Yes. I don't know, if I have to go back and look of those shortened seasons, what his pace would have been over a full season. But 7 40-goal seasons for Steven Stamkos.
Yep.
On a team that has had 3 40-goal scores in its history. So that's a big check toward this is the most talented team. Jonathan Marchessault, also a recent 40-goal scorer, a recent Conn Smythe winner. I think the fact that you have now 2 Conn Smythe Trophy winners since 2019, you have 4 players who have won the Stanley Cup at least once since 2019, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, and Schenn. You have Roman Josi as one of the top 3 defensemen in the league. You have Philip Forsberg, he was a second-team All-Star at left wing. So this season, according to the people who vote on that award, people of our ilk, he was the second best left wing in the NHL this past season. Now, is he the second, or is he really the second best left wing in the league? He's up there at the very least. And you have, there are questions about this roster. We talked a lot about the second line center position yesterday and whether or not presumably Tommy Novak can handle it. The defense is not the defense we talked about during the choice is yours. It's not Josi, Ellis, Ekholm, and Subban.
That's why I say this is definitely not the deepest team.
It's not the deepest team. And that is going to be a question about the Predators entering training camp. We've seen top-heavy teams win the Stanley Cup. Colorado is a top-heavy team. But we've also seen the Panthers just win the Stanley Cup with 3 decent lines, 3 pretty good lines. So that's going to be a question. Are the Predators too top-heavy? And, on paper, they do look to be pretty top-heavy. Though you hope now you have a second line that can score.
Yep.
all of that to say that on paper, that's the operative phrase. On paper, yes, this is the most talented team the Predators have ever had.
I tend to agree. I just think offensively, this team has a chance to be at a level that we've just not seen here. And look, they've had some good offensive teams. For the most part, their good offensive teams have been basically by committee. Like that, I think 17-18 is a perfect example, right? Like that was a good offensive team, but they just had a lot of depth. 06-07 was a really good offensive team, and Korea was great, and Peter Forsberg came in at the end, but it was more the depth that they had. Like this one has some firepower from a star perspective that they've not had before. I don't think that's arguable. Like this is when Marchessault coming in and Stamkos and Forsberg, and you still have Yossi at the top of his game, Ryan O'Reilly. Like this has got some pretty good firepower here.
And to put it into context, last year's team averaged 3.24 goals per game,
Yep.
which was tied with the 2006-2007 team, I should say.
Yep.
For the most in Predators history.
Yep.
So you're building off of a team that scored more than 3 goals per game, tied for the highest scoring team in franchise history, and you're adding Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea, who
had about
is-
100 goals.
Yes, who is a goal scorer from the back end.
Right.
Like, it would not shock me in the slightest if the Predators 2024-2025 team is the highest scoring team in franchise history. And also, by the way, in terms of power play, the highest power play in franchise history single season, the 21-22 team had a power play of 24.4%.
Yep.
Wouldn't be shocked if that is overtaken by this team
I
as well.
think both of those things should be the expectation. Like this should be the highest scoring team in the history of the franchise. And the power play, based on the lineup that we threw out there yesterday of what that top power play unit could be, this should be the best power play they've ever had. Like I think that should be the expectation for this group. Now, I still have questions about, I mean, you brought it up, the second line center, really the center depth as a whole. How much of a problem is that going to be? Like, can they overcome that? Can Tommy Novak handle that stuff? Look, I like their defense. I don't know that I love their defense. Like Brady Shea, I'm interested to see where they play him. Is it going to be with Yossi? If it is going to be with Yossi, like is Lozon, Carrier, are they going to be able to replicate what they did last year? You know, Stasny coming up with Shen or Fabro. Like, what's that look like? I like their defense. I don't know that I'm in love with their defense like I have been in the past around here. But to me, if this team, presuming that people stay healthy, which is always a presumption I guess you have to make here, presuming this team stays healthy, if they're not the highest scoring team in Predators history, I think that would be incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, I would say so. And there are risks baked into all of the contracts that they just gave out. That's just part of the free agency game. But with Steven Stamkos specifically, and I mentioned this earlier this week, about not every player on your team needs to be well-rounded.
Yep.
At this point in his career, Steven Stamkos is a fairly one-dimensional player, but he is excellent at that one dimension.
Yep.
You're not expecting Steven Stamkos to back check like Sasha Barkov. That's probably not going to happen. But his one-timer, as we've talked about this week, one of the best in the league. Up there with Alex Ovechkin and Leon Draisaitl and Mika Zibanejad and Nikita Kucherov. And that is something that is going to be a huge weapon for this Predators team, especially on the power play.
Yep.
As I said, 19 of his 40 goals last season were scored off the one-timer. 13 of those 19 were scored on the power play. So that's, just the ability to score more consistently on the power play, again, presumably, is going to make this team, I think, one of the better offensive teams in the league.
So with all that in the backdrop, what is fair, what is not fair in terms of expectations for this team heading into this season? We'll get into that coming up next. Take your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vengen, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com will be with us later this hour. Looking forward to that. We'll get into all things Titans with PK. Jonathan Marchessault, Predators forward, will be with us at 8:40. So one of the big-name free agents that Barry Trotz was able to land on July 1st. Jonathan Marchessault coming up at 8:40 today on the program. Looking forward to that. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Again, our text line is down, so encouraging your phone calls, 615-737-1025. Your comments in the YouTube chat are welcome as well. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Ryan in Mount Juliet. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. Yes, on paper, I think this is the most talented roster the Preds have ever had. Depth-wise, I agree with you, Robby. It's probably not as deep as they've ever had, but on paper it is. And I was just thinking, on top of having Luke Shen here, Stamkos also has Todd Richards, his old power play coach in Tampa, who's on the coaching staff here, who could probably and give some insight on how to use Stamkos the way they want to use them.
Yep, thanks for the call, Ryan.
To be fair, I don't think it. I mean, I'm not discounting what Ryan is saying. I think we all know how Steven Stamkos.
Yeah, I don't think it's
on
going to
the
be a
power
big
play.
mystery how they're going to use him on the power play.
Yeah, I think he's going to park his butt in that left circle.
Andrew Brunette, when he was on with Stilly the other day, wasn't really willing to divulge much of anything in terms of like who's going to play with who and what does the lineup look like, and you know, are you going to rotate people in on the power play? Are you going to go 5 minutes and load it up? Like he didn't really get into much detail on all that. One thing he did say was, "Yeah, we know where Steven Stamkos is going to play on the power play." Like I think it's pretty clear where he's going to play.
No, it always helps to have that familiarity. It always helps to have a coach or a player who has spent time with a new player, because you need that familiarity to get everybody acclimated. But I don't think it's a surprise where Steven Stamkos is going to go on the power play. But I saw this goes into our conversation. I saw a tweet from our dear friend John Glennon yesterday. I think it was yesterday. He had a screenshot
about
from
Trey Avery.
No, it's not about Trey Avery,
Okay.
but it was from Bet Online at Bet
Mike.
Online AG.
Mike, what about Trey Avery?
Oh man.
Anyway,
John Glennon is a wonderful human being, and he tweeted out how betting odds have improved after free agency. And according to Bet Online, the Nashville Predators Stanley Cup odds went from 35-1 to 16-1.
it's a pretty big jump.
As a result of their free agent signings. The other teams that on this screenshot, the Devils, went from 20-1 to 9-1.
Okay.
Utah went from 80-1 to 66-1.
Good for them.
And Toronto went from 18-1 to 16-1. So that's
All
a gigantic jump in futures betting for the Stanley Cup for the Predators, from 35-1 to 16-1.
Yeah, that's a pretty massive jump, no doubt about it. So with that in mind, like what are fair expectations with this group? What's fair? What's not fair? Is this a championship or bust season? Is this a Stanley Cup or bust type of season for the Predators? We talked yesterday about how I believe they're in a 3-year window.
I think it's 2.
You think it's 2?
I
So
think it's 2.
it's pretty short-term window, regardless of whether you think it's 2, whether you think it's 3. With that in the backdrop, like how do you view what success looks like for this team? Because obviously they're all in here. And I guess my answer to that right off the hop, Adam, would be I don't think it's championship or bust this year when I've given them a 3-year window. But like the idea, I heard some people talking about, should the expectation be to be in the top 3 of the division? Yes, the expectation should be that this is not a wild card team. This team is firmly in the playoffs. And I think the expectation should be this team is prepared to do some damage when they get there. Now, a lot of that's going to be matchup driven, who they get matched up with in the first round, who's healthy, who's not, all that stuff that we normally talk about. But I think the expectation should be that you win a playoff round at least, and you start to continue to build your way towards that championship. So of the next 3 years, I don't think there's any doubt it's championship or bust. Is it fair to put that label on this season specifically?
Well, I think the baseline should be, you mentioned finishing top 3 in the division. That's a given. I think it needs to be top 2. I think they have to have home ice advantage in at least the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, if I think they should challenge for the division title, but if they finish in second, I think that's okay. But they have to have home ice advantage in the first round. I think that's a baseline. After that, it is a good question to like, how far do they have to go? Because remember, this past season, few people expected them to make the playoffs. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs. I can't remember if you thought they were going to make the playoffs.
I did not.
So them making the playoffs, I felt like was gravy. So even if they lost in the first round, I think Predators fans could be encouraged by what they saw considering preseason expectations. That is no longer the case. It's hard to say. I mean, would it be unfair to say that I think they should get to at least the Western Conference final? Like, I mean, they haven't won a playoff round since 2018, right?
That is correct.
So winning a playoff round, again, is also a baseline. So that's my baseline. They have to be finished in the top 2 of their division to have home ice advantage in the first round, and they have to win a round.
Yeah.
But considering all the money that they poured into this and the fact that I think the window is even smaller than you do, I'm wondering if it's at least winning 2 rounds. I mean, if they don't make it to the Stanley Cup final, but they at least challenge there in the Western Conference final, I think you could be okay with that. I mean, am I out of bounds by thinking that?
No, I don't think you're out of bounds. I mean, like I said, clearly they are all in to win. Clearly. I mean, you can make the argument that at their age, whatever the best version of Stamkos and Marchessault is at this point in their career, you're probably going to see it this year, right? Like, you can make that argument. Now, you could also, if you wanted to, say, well, yes, this year they should still be really, really good, and maybe the year after that, when they've been in the system for a year, they're even better. Who knows? But my guess would be that at their ages, their best year is probably going to be now, right?
Yes.
So you could make the argument that's why the question comes up, like, is this year cup or bust for them? Because this might be the best version of what they have over the next couple of years here. You got Saros still on a $5 million contract, a guy who started really slow last year and then came on toward the end of the year. Stamkos, Marchessault, Forsberg, O'Reilly. And that's the other part of this. Like, O'Reilly. Is O'Reilly going to be at whatever his best version is? Is this the last year of it? I mean, we talked about that contract at the time. It felt like 4 years was too long. This is year 2 of it. So what does all that look like? So I think if you wanted to, you could make the argument that it should be Stanley Cup or bust this year. I don't know that I necessarily subscribe to that, but I think you could make that argument.
All right. I'm setting my baseline right here and now, and you can freezing cold take me 11 months from now if you want. My baseline for a successful Predator season, finishing in the top 2 of their division. I mean, I would rather them win the title, but to make me feel better about my prediction.
Yeah.
But top 2 in the division. So they have home ice advantage in the first round.
Okay.
And they have to make it to at least the conference final.
Okay.
If they don't win the conference final, I mean, it would be disappointing because, as you said, as we both have said, the window is small. But I think the baseline for this team, based on what the moves they made and the time frame they have to be effective with all of these players, is top 2 finish in the division, Western Conference final.
So do we think that's fair? 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. What is fair for the expectations for this group after they've added Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, plus re-signed a couple of their own guys? We'll get more of your thoughts on that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Got some tickets to give away, a 4-pack of tickets to see the Nashville Sounds take on Iowa next Thursday, July the 11th. Coming up First Horizon Park. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on Iowa next Thursday at First Horizon Park. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Our friend D Freedom, who tweeted yesterday about why are you talking about hockey when you could be talking about the Braves and the Grizzlies, has tweeted back in. Now wants to talk WWE or NASCAR.
I mean, I can talk about wrestling, but that's it's more Chase's purview in terms of talking wrestling on the show.
And Chase and Big Joe have a very successful show, and they talk about a lot of different things. From this show's perspective, you can talk about WWE and NASCAR on your own time. I'll take I'll borrow a Stillman line.
Yes. I mean, this is the big news of the week here in Nashville. Yep. I mean, the Titans are 3 weeks away from training camp, and we'll get into some Titans once Paul shows up at around 7:30. I like how you say it's around 7:30.
Well, I don't know specifically when he's going to show up. He
likes to show up early. He seems very excited to be here.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here when he's here.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's excited to be here when I'm here.
We're going to find out.
But we'll find out.
We're going to find out. So the expectations for the Predators, what's fair, what's not fair. By the way, D Freedom, we're going to talk some Titans a little bit later with Paul Kaharski. I hope that you're okay with that on July the 3rd.
I'll ask Paul about
not
his
a damn thing's
thoughts
going on in football.
Zach Edey and the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll get
his thoughts on that too.
We'll get that. Yeah.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. So you've kind of laid the bar as top 2 in the division, Western Conference final, as fair expectations for the Predators this season. Is that fair? Is that not fair? Look, I think the fan base is fired up. And look, by the time the season comes around, Edmonton still looks really scary. I mean, you look at their lineup, they added Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson now in Edmonton. Like they've got a pretty loaded group. So I think they are clearly going to be the favorite in the West heading into this season. I still think Dallas is a really good team. Colorado's got Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. So as long as you got those two guys, you're going to be in contention some way, somehow. But I do think the Predators are kind of right there with some of those teams. Now, maybe not with Edmonton. Like, I think Edmonton is clearly the favorite. But I think the Predators are right there with some of those other teams as it relates to favorites heading into this season. So I don't think the bar that you've laid out there is unfair. I mean, look, the actions here, and like Barry Trotz didn't go all out the other day and say, cup or bust, or we've got championship expectations this season, or he didn't attach his name to any of that stuff. But the actions kind of tell you all you need to know, right? I mean, they've gone out and they have committed here for the next couple of years. They're all in with Stamkos and Marchessault and Saros and Forsberg and Yossi and O'Reilly. I mean, they're all in with this kind of core group that they've got here. So whether or not they ever come out and actually say it, their actions tell you that they are completely in win now championship mode here, and we'll see whether or not they're able to actually pull it off and get it done.
So I went back and looked at the Predators roster now that the NHL has officially added Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea to the Predators roster. I tweeted this yesterday. The average age of their roster is 29.81, which is 31st in the NHL. The only team with an older roster is the Pittsburgh Penguins at 30.45 years on average. So the Predators have one of the two oldest teams in the NHL. And you don't sign up for that if you're not anticipating challenging for a championship in the near future. So that is why I say the window is limited, because you have the second oldest roster in the NHL as it currently stands, behind a team like the Penguins, which they're in a weird spot, but similar to the Chicago, similar to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You'll take that because they've won. They've won multiple Stanley Cups with that core, with Crosby and Malkin and Letang. But I'm looking at the Western Conference playoffs from last year, from this past season. And I'm looking at the teams that made it and stock up, stock down kind of thing. Dallas, I think they've kind of held firm. I think they're kind of in the same spot that they were, at the end of the season.
Yep.
Winnipeg, stock down. I mean, they have Connor Hellebuck. That is, that's the ultimate equalizer. But I think they're stock down.
Yeah.
I think Colorado probably kind of held firm as well. Vancouver, I'm going to say stock down.
I would agree.
They lost Lindholm. They lost Zadorov. Are you expecting
a
JT?
very long contract to Jake DeBrusk?
Yes. Are you expecting JT Miller to be a 100-point player again? And JT Miller was fabulous in that playoff series against the Predators.
Yep.
But, I'm expecting some regression from the Canucks. The Oilers, I'm going to say stock up.
Yep.
I like what they've done for their bottom six. I thought Arvidsson was a savvy signing. I think Jeff Skinner was a savvy signing. I agree that Edmonton returns as the presumptive favorite. Los Angeles, stock down. Vegas, stock down. So of the teams that made the postseason, I would say Predators stock up, obviously.
For sure.
So the only team other than the Predators who made the playoffs in the Western Conference, the only team I'm going to say also improved clearly in the offseason was the Edmonton Oilers. That's it. Like the other teams either held firm or declined. So that's putting it into perspective of where I think the Predators should be in the pecking order in their conference.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And again, I'm still going to leave the door open for like Vegas specifically. And I know they've got some cap issues they're going to have to sort out. But like it always feels like they're one move away, like right around the corner. And now that Marchessault's gone, what's that next move going to be? Like it feels like they're going to be up to something.
Yes.
So what does that look like? Dallas with another year. Like I agree with you. I think they've held firm. The one question I would have on that is like Wyatt Johnston was an absolute stud in the playoffs, and Stankoven came up at the end of last year. Like how much better are those guys going to be? There's a lot that goes into it, but no question about it. Like I think the most improved team in the Western Conference is clearly the Nashville Predators. And we'll see what that looks like in terms of the end of season result. But they should be right there in terms of competing in the Western Conference. And if they're not, I think that would be really disappointing. One thing I'm really interested to see here too, I still look at the Predators roster and they don't have great speed, right? Like, I don't know how many burners that they've got with their group right now.
Marchessault is not a fast skater.
He's not a fast skater.
Stamkos is not.
Stamkos is not an overly fast skater, although I think he's a little bit faster than people think he is at this stage of his career. But that's also, I think, where the system comes into play, like the way that Brunette wants to play and how quickly you try to get the puck up the ice should lend itself to not totally neutralizing speed, but I think it makes speed a little bit less important with the way that he tries to play with putting the puck up the ice, stretch passes, all that stuff.
I can tell you exactly how fast Steven Stamkos is. According to NHL Edge, his top skating speed in miles per hour was 22.41, which ranks in the 57th percentile in the league. Marchessault was below 50th percentile, so not a fleet-footed skater.
Nope.
That's not his game. But we've talked about this. Speed.
But for Stamkos at 34 is not. It's not like he's struggling out there.
No, but speed is also your ability to process the game. It's not
exactly.
It's not always just your foot speed. It's
right.
also your ability to think the game. And I would imagine Steven Stamkos.
Who could really fly? That had some nice foot speed, but couldn't do anything last year. Liam Foudy was a pretty good skater.
I thought you were going to say Victor Stahlberg.
Stahlberg was a great skater and did not do anything.
No.
Sometimes it's more important to actually know what you're doing out there.
Indeed.
Turns out. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com is here. He'll be with us coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
Paul Kuharsky, PaulKuharsky.com is with us here on the program on Robby and Rexrode. He's going to be with us for the next hour plus. Jonathan Marchessault coming up at 8:40, new member of the Nashville Predators. PK, happy 4th of July. How are we doing?
Good morning. Happy 4th to you. Good to see you guys. Enjoyed the conversation coming in. I was late to all the Predators movement because I was in a little bit of a haze, had a little bit of a get together with the college gang in New York. So I'm still left with so they're not trading Saros?
Not trading Saros.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
Paying him a lot of money. A lot of money for a lot of years. 8 years.
I like the go for it mentality. I like the small window mentality. I like that Adam is pinning them to 2 years. Let's see it now.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I would love your historical context because we've been talking a lot about whether or not Steven Stamkos is the greatest, most decorated free agent signing the Predators have ever had. And Robby and I both agree the answer is yes, just based on his pedigree, his career. From a Titans perspective, who is that? Because, the Titans have not been historically, correct me if I'm wrong, a team that spends wild in free agency, even though they just spent a lot of money in free agency this year. Like, who would be the Steven Stamkos equivalent in Titans history in terms of decorated player signing with the Titans in free agency?
Probably DeAndre Hopkins off the top of my head. Julio Jones wasn't signed; he was traded for. But in terms of pedigree, those would be the two guys. Randy Moss, was a street free agent when they signed him.
Yep.
But we all have fun talking about the Hall of Fame level receivers they've had through here and the lack of production, and Hopkins finally breaking that. I mean, Hopkins, I was keeping a tracker last year. I think it was 8 games. In 8 games, he did more than like Carl Pickens, Randy Moss, and Julio Jones combined.
Andre Johnson,
all those guys combined. But he's definitely the one. And I mean, you were talking about Stamkos probably being, one dimensional, but with a very good dimension. Hopkins, I would say is more than one dimensional.
I would agree.
And a clear Hall of Fame guy. How old is Stamkos?
34.
I don't know how that translates from one sport to the other, because I know there are guys in the NHL who keep their legs for a long time. So he might be kind of a DeAndre Hopkins comp, a guy that doesn't Hopkins isn't a guy that fits the traditional mold and necessarily drops off at that age in his 30s, where most people are wary, though a lot of teams were wary. And the Titans, hit a home run with him. But I think there's still a concern that he hits a wall at some point, though he certainly, all those guys don't think they will. Yep. He certainly doesn't think he will. And his game doesn't lend itself to wall hitting as a concern the same way it does with most receivers.
So this is a incredibly busy offseason for both the Titans and the Preds. Now, both of them had a ton of money to spend. So that's kind of the obvious caveat in the background here. But there's been a lot of talk this week about, from the Preds standpoint, of it's a major week because superstar players actively chose to come here and elected to sign with them. The Titans spent a ton of money with Calvin Ridley, and we've gone through the list of the Titans offseason here. Does this signal to you anyway, like that our market in Nashville has become more attractive to some of these guys? Is it as simple as the Titans had money to spend and the Predators had money to spend and there's no state income tax and that helps? Like, how do you view the active offseason, I guess, for both teams?
I don't buy that the market's in any way been unattractive for Titans. I don't know nearly as much about the Predators. I know pro sports guys go where the money is, generally speaking. The no state tax is a nice extra bonus that the front offices can sell and show, like, hey, this contract in Carolina really is only worth this money as compared to our contract, which is worth this money. The agents know the difference there. Most people like Nashville as a place to raise their kids and raise their family. And I think fans generally put far too much weight in the state of the Predators or the state of the Titans in terms of a deterrent for players to sign there. After the money, players, big-time players in particular, generally like to come and make an impact to help turn a franchise towards great. So if they like the management, if they like the coach, and believe in it, which generally you're going to fare well in that department if you have a good meeting or a good reputation.
Yep.
Not going to hesitate to come to this market if the dollars are equal or better. You got to win the contract negotiation.
Well, I do think though that, and I'm with you. I don't buy that they've ever.
Titans
been
generally
off.
haven't been big free agent shoppers.
That's the thing.
They haven't
like,
operated.
They've
that
never
way.
really operated.
But when they've
that
gone out to chase guys, they've won their fair share. And now we've seen them with an offseason where they had to patch out the roster with free agents, and they did pretty damn well in terms of getting big names and having a plan B or C that they told us about.
And I do think that, obviously, I mean, this, the city is way different now than it was 15 years ago. And I do think that helps. Like, there are a ton of NFL players, either current or former, that live here that don't play for the Titans. Like, there's a ton of people moving. Like, George Kittle's around. He's on the glass at Predators games for the second half of the season because he lives here. Like, he's best friends with Philip Forsberg. There are a ton of guys that live here. So I do think from an attraction standpoint to our area, it's a little bit different now than it was 15 years ago, just because this is one of the hottest places to live in America in terms of people moving here. How much of an impact that has on free agency, I don't know. I just think that people have kind of woken up to what a cool place this is.
Yeah, and we could also, we could do the math on what percentage of these guys are still on the younger years who are into going down to Broadway, and what percentage have young families and are more interested in living in a nice neighborhood and finding a nice private school and, I would say finding a nice commute. They are coming in relatively early and avoiding the traffic. I don't know how much you're factoring in traffic because you're going to find it virtually everywhere.
Yep.
But, we've got that even split where people feel good about both. Hey, I could live in a condo and go downtown and have some beers with my gang, or, my wife and kids can feel safe in our gated neighborhood. And we've got a nice pool, and the kids aren't far away from the private school we're sending them to set them off on their educational life.
How much of a role does the no state income tax play in the NFL? Because it's apples to oranges when you consider the NHL, the size of the contracts. The NHL is a hard cap league. There are 6 teams, I believe, in the NHL that have that advantage, including the Predators. But just because of the size of the contracts given out in the NFL, is that a consideration players give, or is it just a smaller consideration?
I think it's a consideration. I think smart agents are telling guys about it and the thing, but I also think there's some young brash guys who want the tweet that says X dollars. And if the X dollars from, the Chargers are bigger than the X dollars from the Titans, they like that headline, even if their agent's saying, it doesn't really add up to more. It's not better in the long run. I think agents probably wrestle with young, brash guys who don't want to really hear about the implications from their accountant. So I think in some instances it's helpful. In other instances, it's less helpful. But certainly it's no disadvantage. So, they're spelling it out. What they want is the same number or a better number, plus the tax implication, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to, it's hard for some guys, I think, to get their head around that this lower number is actually a better number for you than that higher number, because the headline doesn't look better.
We're going to get full-fledged into the Titans here in just a second. I do want to get your thoughts. I thought about you specifically the other night.
Touched.
As the U.S. soccer team lost again to Uruguay. I was like, the 2 people I thought of immediately were you and Glennon. What do we feel? How are we feeling about Trey Avery? Yeah, Trey Avery.
You brilliantly squeezed him in. When that whole thing came up earlier segment, you mentioned Glennon. Adam mentioned Glennon in a positive way. And I was like, surely Robbie's not going to be able to get it in here. And you got into Trey Avery very subtly and softly. And I was like, oh, that was brilliant. And then you came back and hit it harder. And I was like, man, he's
Mike,
good. He is never going to let that go.
He's learning.
It's one of the most beautiful things about this beautiful show. And I was just like, it's just like so refreshing.
Mike, your thoughts on Trey Avery?
I love it.
Love me some.
U.S. soccer is just a mess right now. Call it a golden generation. These guys are not as good as we make them out to be. That outside of Pulisic, a lot of them are not playing as much with their European clubs as they need to be, which is where they would get better. But I don't think Lawless is the best commentator out there. But I thought he had a good line in reviewing their bombing out, in the saying, they're better soccer players, but they don't make up a better national team.
Yep.
And here's the other thing. It's a little bit to make it local for some people, like the Titans are better now, but like most of the good Titans don't feel any like potential pressure from somebody behind them. There's a good share of the national team, the good players, who feel no fear of not being in the lineup. And you look at other national teams, and once in a while, there's a guy who's like really good, who the coach doesn't play for whatever reason. And you're like, why would he not be in the lineup? Well, there's a lot of I don't want to call it mind gaming, but from an American perspective, it looks like mind gaming. There's no mind gaming, good or bad, that goes on with the U.S. national team. I think Berhalter's out of his depth. I think he did very well to get us out of the group in the last World Cup, which surprised me. They played better than I expected, but he shouldn't have been back after that, even if the Reina family drama and all of that was part of the meddling and all of that. And we got to go out and get a big time guy. I mean, Jurgen Klopp is a dream because of how expensive he would be, but there are plenty of guys with experience coaching World Cup teams who could squeeze more out of this organization. They don't need a big, long review. And look, the players let them down. When you get a red card early, it's hard to blame the coach that much. When you get a terrible ref, that's not on the coach. But these are things that happen in international play that your team has to be ready for and play through. And I think the team's too comfortable with him, and he's got to go. And he's got to go soon. And they need to hit a home run like they have with the women.
Yep.
That they needed the women's coach, the women's team bottomed out by their standards, and they went and got the best available coach. Emma Hayes is a tremendous coach. It was a terrific hire. Go match it on the men's side.
We'll have more with Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com coming up next. Get full-fledged into the Tennessee Titans. Paul Kuharsky brought to you by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. We'll take your calls for PK as well, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser, Paul Kuharski, paulkuharski.com, talking all things Tennessee Titans. Joe Rexrode on vacation, on his way to Virginia.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hope his travels are going well. Apparently listening to us the whole way. We'll see.
Loves to drive.
He does. Big driver.
Load up that car. Get the fights going.
Well, here's a question for both of you. What's your absolute limit in terms of like how long you are willing to drive in the car? I feel like my cutoff is 4 hours.
Yeah,
I feel like that's where
I'm
am.
about the same though. For Gulf Coast vacations, we've driven it, and I don't know how much you listened when we're ranting about other things. This Gulf Coast trip, I mean, if it was 6.5, if it was 6.5, that'd be fine. But it turns into 8.5 because of the traffic patterns,
right?
And that makes me want to continue driving into the Gulf when I get there. But that's an extreme for me. I more than 4 is very difficult for me. I also am a fall asleeper. I've gotten a lot better lately, but it's very easy for me to get on the road, and the rhythm of that rumble of the stuff on the road is like a lullaby.
Like my 3-year-old.
Yeah, much like that, except in a less comfortable seat, and with the driver's wheel and a brake and an accelerator in front.
It's not good.
4 hours. 4 hours is my cutoff. I mean, even a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I and our son, where we were visiting family, my wife's parents just moved to the Tampa area, and we were driving from Tampa to the Orlando area for my wife's cousin's baby shower. And without traffic, that's about a 2-hour drive.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But coming back, there was a typical Florida, downpour, and you have to cut through the theme park traffic.
Yeah, that's bad.
And so it took about 3.5 hours to do the 2-hour drive back, and I was nearing my limit on that one.
My limit's like 10. I'll go 8 or 9. Now I would rather hop on a plane, but I've been known to hop in the car.
TD and I are very frowned upon in the Titans media corps, which there's hardly anybody that travels anyway. But like we would both, and he does it regularly. I do it sometimes. Fly to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Like, look, on a Monday morning coming back from Indianapolis to get to a press conference, you got to leave pretty early.
Yeah.
I could use that time sleeping. Or people say, well, by the time you get to the airport and park and all of that, you add that time. Look, that stuff's not that bad if you're an efficient traveler. You know this as well as anybody, Adam. When you did a real Preds season, really covering the bulk of a road season, you get a rhythm down to how to do that. There's a science to getting to the gate 45 minutes before and all of that. And even a short trip, there's a real benefit to flying as opposed to driving. I would rather fly to Indianapolis any day. You get from here to Indianapolis, you don't check a bag, you're in an Uber, you're in your hotel pretty damn quick.
Yeah, I would say so. So on the Titans front, it's interesting because I think our show is probably, and by our show I mean Joe specifically, is a little bit more guilty.
Joe's part of your show.
We've talked a lot about Kyle Phillips the last few years and the slot receiver part of this. And quite frankly, they just really haven't had a productive slot receiver. I guess it's Adam Humphries.
Yeah, but even Adam Humphries, but even he didn't live up to the same health concerns as Kyle Phillips.
Right. So he didn't live up to what they wanted him to be. Boyd, as we know, has been very productive in Cincinnati, and there's obviously great familiarity there with the offense. I'm just, from your vantage point, how important do you think that position actually is in the functionality of this offense? How big of a deal do you think he can actually be in this offense, given the fact that I understand it's a different regime, different offense, all that stuff, but the Titans just really haven't had that guy for a long time?
Well, I think he's a big deal in that they're going to be playing 3 wide, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's over 60%, maybe 60, 70%.
Yeah.
Thing about Boyd is that he's bigger than these guys, 6'2", 203. That's no giant, but put him next to Kyle Phillips or Adam Humphries, and that's bigger. I know he's had some injury stuff, but if you look last year, he was dressed for all 17. He started 13. And he was actually thrust into a bigger role because of the injuries to other guys. Year before, he played 16, started 14. He hasn't missed games. He might have had some nagging stuff, or maybe I'm misremembering that based on the injuries to their other guys. And yards per reception last year was 10, but the year before for a slot receiver, 13.1, year before 12.4. You'll take that out of the slot for absolutely certain, right? And the last 3 years, 12 touchdowns total. He's averaged about, go back to 2018, 7, 5, 4, 5, 5, 2. But that's nice production out of that spot. Also, I think that he's very much a designated slot receiver, so you don't have to worry, early before he was around. They're like, we'll roll everybody through everywhere.
Yeah.
And now it's a little bit more set. You can still do that, certainly, and flash Ridley there and flash Hopkins there as a surprise to change things up and to affect matchups and all of that. But your base, and base is a word you use sparingly now, but they really do kind of have a base offense with who's where in terms of the receivers and a one back set and one tight end. I think gives them a certain stability that they just haven't had. And you talk about Phillips. Look, Phillips is a tremendous practice player.
Yep.
I mean, he makes people look foolish. His short area quickness is tremendous. When he came back last year, I was touting that he was going to be a difference maker that gave Levis something he didn't have, and it just didn't show up. They didn't use him that way, and I didn't understand why. But now I think with Boyd and Jackson, who's a 5th round pick, who figures to be the main return man, I think it's going to be hard for Phillips to make the roster.
I think it is too. I just the 3 wide part of this, I think number one, Titans fans are welcoming that with open arms. But like the money that they got Boyd for, and we talked about this at the time, like it was basically nothing. I was surprised that he was as cheap as he was. And I think he's got the opportunity to be really effective in this offense with Ridley and Hopkins on the outside. I mean, if he's
29 and he'll be 30 in November.
Correct.
So people fear that. I think people think he's a bit of a product of the system, which he is. But the Titans say, well, hey, that's our system.
That's great.
So, yeah, plug him into our system.
I mean, they targeted him. Now, granted, injuries happened, and Higgins was hurt last year, and obviously Burrow was hurt. But they targeted him 98 times last year. Like, everybody's going to focus in on Hopkins and Ridley, and deservedly so. But like when it's 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6, and they need a first down, like I think Boyd's going to be a pretty big deal in this offense.
I do too. And look, you say 3rd and 5, and I think, well, Hopkins should be open on 3rd and 5, but on the perimeter. Boyd should be open on 3rd and 5 in the middle of the field. Chig or Wiley should give you an option on 3rd and 5, and then your running back is these 2 guys who are interchangeable and supposed to be quality options in the passing game. Should give you options. And then Ridley, surely can catch a ball on 3rd and 5, but maybe he's going to create some space in a way where they think, well, what if they go, try to take a shot here on 3rd and 5? That's far more appealing than anything we've talked about in some time in terms of an option there. Plus, depending on how you're running it, maybe there's a possibility of running it there, or Levis can take off, depending on how that's going. But I think Tyler Boyd is a really good and surprising acquisition. Like you said, I would have thought he cost more money, so that there was no market for him was terrific. Now, there's no market for Carl Lawson.
Yep.
I'd like to see something come out of no market for Carl Lawson. There's no market for Justin Simmons. I'd like to see something come out of no market for Justin Simmons.
Are you surprised by that it's taken as long as it has here?
I'm not surprised that right now there's nothing going on because, I mean,
everybody's on vacation right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is as dead could be. So, once people get back, which I presume is like, 10 days, July 13th, maybe, or the beginning of that week, with the 23rd being the start for the Titans and for the bulk of the league, maybe some of those things pick up. Look, Elijah Molden hasn't missed as much time as I imagined. And I think I like Elijah Molden as a guy. Like, his attitude is tremendous. And I think his heart for it is tremendous. But I think his ability to get hurt and his slowness are, we've talked a lot about the secondary being the key to this team. There's a weak link there that we haven't really dived into the way we probably should, and it's him.
Yep.
And you want your safeties covering for your corners, not your corners covering for your safeties. I
Yep.
got to write that down. There's a slow
T-shirt
time
for you.
piece.
615-737-1025.
That's not marketable T-shirt. Come on, don't sucker me into that.
I'd buy it. 615-737-1025, our phone number.
You are not my T-shirt test case guy. You'll buy anything I put out. I'm like, I'm gonna make this T-shirt, and then you and I are wearing it around town.
So, yeah. Wore it the other day. Don't block the box, baby. More with Paul Kuharsky coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
Paul Kuharski with us for the next hour, talking all things Tennessee Titans. We'll have Jonathan Marchessault coming up at 8:40, new Nashville Predators forward. PK brought to you by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa.
I know this would be a big production effort for Nick, but I know Nick's always up for a big extra production effort. I just feel like when Rexy isn't here, should erase him from all of that show entry stuff. And same for you when you're not here, though. I don't hold you in the same contempt because I feel like you're more worthy of vacation.
That's
but when Rexy's not here, you should get rid of the biscuit and everything.
I agree.
And you should just get rid of the Robby and Rexrode promo. Make it like it's not his show.
Charles Robinson said the exact same thing.
Did he?
Just totally scrap him when he's not here. I think we need to work on this.
That's straight out of the Mike and the Mad Dog playbook. I believe that.
Well, that was the Mad Dog came back unexpectedly, and that caused their divorce.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike had the whole week planned, and all of a sudden, Dog is back, and it just threw Mike into a.
He couldn't handle it. He took me off all the
That was
stuff.
a divorce. That's like if you tell your wife, "Hey, I'm going on vacation with the boys this week," and she's like, "Cool," and then you end up home, and she's pissed.
If I recall
Why
correctly,
are you still here?
if I recall correctly, that when ESPN did one of those mini docs on Mike and the Mad Dog, they were talking about how Francesa was on vacation, Russo was in alone. He changed the jingle, took Francesa out of the jingle, and Francesa was so pissed about it, he came back early.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, Nick, what you could do on the on the graphics and stuff. I'm not good at this either, but you have those things where you can erase, just use your finger to erase. Do very crude erasing of the Rexrode part, where it's clear that a child did it, and just put that up on all the socials and stuff.
Kuharski just screaming,
and then just stick a mini me of me on there with a spray paint can or something like that. It'd be terrific. I could help you. I've got some time.
Rexrode had the pedal down coming back from Virginia. Get this guy out of here.
He's turning the car around right now on the interstate.
I can help you with it. I've got nothing to do right now for the next 3 weeks. My wife is working so hard right now. And there's got to be the level of resent right now has to be so
pretty
high.
Yeah.
She's working she worked till 9:30 last night. She came down and she was putting something in the dishwasher. And I'm like, "Are you actually done, or are you taking another break?" Meanwhile, she comes down at noon, and I'm asleep on the couch in front of the Euros. So I might as well, be at the beach.
Hey, but 3 weeks from now, you're going to be going nonstop.
Yeah, sweating. Yeah. I'm working on my early hydration right now, sweetheart.
You're going to be
reach
yelling
me
at
a cup of
everybody
water
else.
from the couch when you come down.
Yelling at everybody else about not following through with Titans media policies.
Yeah.
Heard about that.
I need this
Just get
rest
after
to get ready
Yeah.
to be frustrated by the Titans media corps.
Are you a bucket hat guy?
It's not quite a bucket hat. It's bucket hat like. It's a little bit bigger than a bucket hat. I had a little piece of cancer cut out of my face. I wear anything shamelessly.
Yeah.
I do not want to do that again.
No.
Sun protection is important.
Very
Absolutely.
important. You find that at the rink?
No.
Keyser looked like he was about to rob a bank yesterday in the rink with 4 jackets on.
I would
Good stuff.
hate it. I would hate to be cold.
I had shorts and t-shirt on yesterday. Doing it again today,
You're
baby.
very tough.
Yeah.
It's especially hard in the summer just because it's so
Ridiculous.
ungodly hot outside.
Yeah, and then you walk into the cold.
Right. But during the winter, you're already wearing all the winter stuff, right?
Peter
So-
Laviolette used to go flip-flops at the practice rink when it's 51 degrees inside there.
Was he in flip-flops when Stillman asked him for his autograph?
Good question. I don't know.
I think he was probably suited up at that point.
You think so?
Yes.
Stillman's been
Do we
told
know that
all
that's
the
the only
reasons
time?
this is inappropriate and still thinks it's fine.
Do we know that that's the only time that Stilly asked him for the autograph? It could have been.
Well,
multiple
I mean,
times.
he obviously he's so close to him, but he couldn't get him at a private time. He had to get him at a official
Draft.
during a media window is when he had to get his great friend to sign the autograph. Right.
Taking your thoughts on the Titans. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. How do you think the split is going to shake down? Because we've gotten a lot of different responses to this. When let's assume health, which is a dangerous thing to assume in the NFL, especially at the running back position. But let's assume health for a second. Between Pollard and Spears, what does an ideal split look like in terms of touches for those guys in your mind?
I mean, 50-50 would be great. It would mess everybody up fantasy-wise, and that's the number one reason you get the question. I get the question a lot from non-Titans people who are clearly fantasy people, and I've been on some fantasy shows that's maybe their top question. What do you expect from Levis? A, so we could place him on our list,
Yep.
and B, what's the split and who's going to score the touchdown? I do think my gut feeling is that Pollard is more likely to be short yardage.
Okay.
And short yardage is probably going to be goal line as well. But that's just an inkling.
Did you see enough from Spears last year to make you think that he's ready for a very significant workload this year?
I guess. Look, it's more about the fact that backs are dropped in around the league on a regular basis and go and do their thing than it is, I mean, there was some good stuff from Spears last year. It's a little inconsistent, but he's in a very difficult situation running behind Derrick Henry. So, but the regularity with which we see backs dropped in around the league and have quick success, I saw enough from him to think that he could be a back like that if they're blocking reasonably well. And I think the blocking will be significantly better. So, I mean, the logic that they've presented for what they're doing at running back makes perfect sense. And now we just need to see them execute it. We need to see them both stay healthy. And I do think, and Callahan told Jim Wyatt and I this at the owners meetings when I brought it up about niches developing. He said at this point we're not thinking that way, but when we take the field and things start to flesh out, yeah, you would think some of those things would develop. That one would be maybe more the short yardage back, and one would be maybe more of the first down back and things like that. And I think that makes sense, that somebody would start to get a little better at this or that and develop those roles, though you don't want to do it to the point where you're entirely predictable with it. But look, what's it matter if you're predictable on first down and a guy's taking the first down carries? And I think they also, Randy Jordan, the running backs coach, said, they're counting touches, not carries. And so I think that's significant. We're going to see how much they really throw the ball to these guys and how much it's a part of the offense. I expect it to be significant. We just talked about it. I think that's why a big reason why the percentage of throwing will be up.
Yep.
I think it's a big reason why Levis's completion percentage should be up significantly, because he's throwing a lot more of those kind of passes. And, I think if they can hit some home runs and open up things underneath, the running backs can get some significant yardage out of those kind of passes.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More coming up next with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Rexrode has texted in.
Oh, God.
Leave my biscuit alone is what Rexrode says. That's all it says. Just leave my biscuit alone.
Are you driving? I drive and text too much too, Joe.
Kyle Tucker, friend of the show, tweeting in, says, I love when Kuharsky's on. I just laugh all morning. Regular comedy genius over here, Paul Kuharsky. We'll have more with him coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us here on the program. New Nashville Predators forward Jonathan Marchessault will join us at 8:40. So looking forward to that. Big week for the Preds. Marchessault coming up at 8:40 today on the show. Right now talking all things Tennessee Titans, taking your thoughts. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We've talked about the Callahan part of this in terms of the first-time play caller. Going to be really interesting to see stylistically what that looks like. You mentioned the shorter passes, the shorter throws that are basically glorified running game plays to get Levis more involved, and it's what the league is now. A lot of these plays that used to be runs are now short passes that try to get your playmakers out in space. You know, we've already had some people on YouTube asking about Chig and what his role could be. Do you think it's possible that Wiley gets more snaps than Chig does this year?
I do. And Mike Herndon's been a big forecaster of this, and there have been some indications from camp. Maybe more snaps. I don't know if it's more value snaps. It's a size thing. The Titans are not giant at wide receiver. You're 3 wide, and Wiley's 6'7", and that gives you something big out there that changes the dynamic a little bit. That would include Chig being more of the third down guy.
Yep.
Which, is not a bad role. I wouldn't look at this as a demotion. I would look at it as if it pans out this way. And I don't think it'd be hard and fast, it could be packagey, but that Chig would be more featured. Again, we were talking about 3rd and 5. Well, Chig could be a good 3rd and 5 guy and a good yak guy. Chig is going to break some tackles, and if he gets a head of steam going, he can really do some damage after the catch if he's catching the ball on the move. And I'm not as familiar with Boyd, but some of these catches are going to be guys facing the quarterback at the sticks. And Chig could certainly make those kind of catches. But
yep.
if you throw to Chig on the move, it can accelerate pretty quickly. And it is a mismatch. If he's in the secondary, he can bowl guys over and, has a little bit of Delaney Walker in him when we've seen him at his best.
Yep.
And he's another guy. Look, you don't want to consistently blast the offensive coaches from the last couple of years. But they did not deploy. They were slow to deploy Chig based on what we saw from him at the end of his rookie year. And then last year, when Phillips was out there, it didn't feel like they were using him the right way. These are things, look, it's early and it's happy season and all of that. But these are things that Brian Callahan was hired to fix.
Yep.
And I think it's fair to expect him to deploy these people in a better fashion and in a way that Levis can really take advantage of them.
I would agree. And then the Ridley part, like Ridley in terms of, we've talked about they need to get faster, and they've needed to get faster for a long time. And obviously he brings that. I'm curious, going back to what you said earlier, the plays he makes himself are the one thing, and he's getting paid to make plays here down the field. But what will the threat of him running down the field open up for the rest of the offense? Like that to me is also, assuming the blocking can hold up and you can get him down the field, how big of an attention grabber is he going to be when he's taken off on a vertical 40 yards down the field? What does that open up underneath?
Yeah.
I think it's a really
And
interesting part of this offense,
you
too.
certainly think he's benefiting everybody, right? He's going to draw, particularly if he is effective early, he's going to draw a double. And when he draws a double, that means more advantageous coverage for everybody else. And DeAndre Hopkins knows how to take advantage of that. I think Boyd, certainly has benefited from that kind of coverage when he's playing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So he's very familiar with that and knows, particularly if teams are zoning, how to find soft spots in the zone. Chig and Wiley would benefit from that. The backs are going to benefit from that. And nobody has backed off of the Titans in a long time.
Yep. Like even
when they've had somebody that's threatening, Derrick Henry has been the number one guy.
Yep.
All right. If you're game planning against the Titans for the bulk of the last 8 years and you sit down and say, who do we need to stop? Derrick Henry's always been the answer. Now, who's the answer? You hope that the answer is Calvin Ridley. And if it's Calvin Ridley, you're being defended in a completely different way than you've been defended when the answer was Derrick Henry.
And also, don't we think, and we'll find out more about him this year, but don't we think one of the strengths right now of Levis's game is the deep ball and his ability to throw the deep ball, and Ridley kind of bringing that new element. Like AJ, when AJ was here, he could catch the deep ball. He made plays down the field. But AJ, I don't think anybody thought of AJ Brown as a burner. Like Calvin Ridley can run. Like that's what separates him. And I'm interested, if Levis gets some time, I would think that's a big part of his skill set is throwing that deep ball, knowing when to do it, when not to. Learning the nuance of that is important. But I think that connection has some serious potential given the skill set of both of those guys.
Absolutely. And they need to hit their share of home runs, but he also needs to be a little bit more wise with when he takes some of those shots. They talked through a couple of those. He talked through one of those with Albert Breer. Callahan did when they looked at film of Levis together. Like, hey, this was a great throw, but it was a risky throw. It wound up incomplete, and you had a first down over here in the flat. So I'm looking at Joe Burrow right now, right? Throw away his rookie year. 2021, when he had a completion percentage of 70.4 that led the league, threw for 4,600 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 8.9 yards per attempt.
Yep.
But that's gone down 7.4, 6.3. I think that's somewhat by design. So they take their shots, but there's a lot of short passing in the Cincinnati offense.
And he's really good over the middle.
Yeah.
And
now, Levis
Levis do that
by nature, really good over the middle. So, I mean, this is there's so many developments for us to watch, right? Burrow's really good over the middle. They would like to incorporate those passes over the middle. They've certainly worked with Levis to get him better, and they will throughout camp at throwing those passes over the middle. But then how good is he at that? And how much do they incorporate it? Well, if he's not gotten that good at it, they're not going to force it. It's not going to be a high percentage of what they do. Hopefully he's gotten better at it enough that they can throw enough of a percentage there. But, if he's not that good at it, they're not going to throw 60% of their passes over the middle if he's that much better on the perimeter. So those are all things that we're monitoring in the big Levis picture.
Yeah, I mean, his arm strength, I get it. Like the throws to the outside, the throws outside the numbers, like he should be really equipped to do that. That is one part of his game at Kentucky. And then last year, again, with the offensive line, it's hard to judge it too much. But I guess that's one part that I'm worried about / very curious to see with Callahan this year, the coaching him up of making decisions where if you make a mistake over the middle, it's going back the other way. Like, can he take a big stride in that area this year? Because to your point, like I think for this offense to operate the way that Callahan wants it to, they need to be able to throw the ball over the middle.
And I didn't think it was his touch that was a problem in terms of his accuracy as much as his placement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Last year. So, and I thought the touch was something he needed to work on early in training camp last year when we watched him or when we saw him in practice. And, he missed a chunk of camp and preseason because of that. Was it a quad? He had that leg wrap. But even watching him in this spring stuff, I think the touch is developing. It's a matter of placement and anticipation more than that. And I think they're working on all of those things. And, it's a work in progress. Where can he get with those things? Those are the things that are going to make or break him in terms of just how good he is.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More coming up next with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. We'll take your thoughts on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on Memphis. Pregame at 5:45. First pitch, 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds Baseball presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Caudle Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Binion, Nick Keyser, Paul Koharski here with you on this Wednesday morning. We'll be joined by Jonathan Marchessault, newest member of the Nashville Predators, in about 10 minutes. We'll get to his thoughts on joining the Predators, how he came to that decision, and the opportunity that is now in front of the Predators after their big free agency period coming up here in just a few minutes. So Jonathan Marchessault coming up at 8:40. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. PK, I look at the opportunity now in front of the Titans as well. We've talked about the money that they've spent this offseason. There's so much that's going to come down to the secondary, as we've talked about, as PK is an absolute war.
I hope that
microphone right now.
I hope that the producer's watching this and he's got an Allen wrench or something handy to fix it after this show. Look, you see what's happening here? Microphone just falling into my lap. I can broadcast from down here. Let me sit on the floor.
Just go get some Blue Chew, man.
Blue Chew?
I mean, if I put it way up here, it's straining my vocal cords.
I think you're talking about ginger chews. Blue Chew is an entirely different
that is
thing.
true. They did just fix that microphone, PK.
Well, let them know. Whatever they did,
Poor job.
it's not effective.
The suit is out of the building,
that
too.
was-
I'll
Fixing
just
it?
sit on my foot. Like now sitting like a middle school girl. Not that middle school boys don't sit like this too, as
It's
far
true.
as I know. I've not been in a middle school classroom lately. They don't really let you wander in there.
I feel like you have to sit.
I can't get over
Facing the
Nick
back
telling
of
you
the
to
chair.
take some Blue Chew.
Yeah.
which is basically just Viagra. Yeah, you don't need any of that.
Suggested Viagra
Yeah.
would solve my
think-
problem.
I mean, if the
It would make one
juice.
area of me bigger that would not help me reach the microphone with my mouth. But nice try.
Fly is open. Let's go pee.
Oh, boy. The ginger chews, though,
Yeah.
always acceptable.
They help my stomach also, which wouldn't help me reach the microphone.
I don't even know where I was going
He had
with
a
the Titan
lot.
stuff.
something about free agency, I believe.
Yeah. So on the
Spending money.
spending money, he spent a lot of it this last offseason. If you could pick one of the Titan signings that you could guarantee to hit, as Joe Rexrode is texting us about Blue Chew now, who would it be? Would it be Ridley? Would it be Snead? I'll count him in this one because it was, a trade, but then they signed him. Would it be a Woozy? Would it be Pollard? I mean, there's a lot to choose
I'm going
from.
to go Cushenberry.
Cushenberry. Okay.
I mean, I think all of those guys have cases, right? But I don't know. I have a slight concern about Ridley getting distracted. I have a slight concern about L'Jarius Sneed's knee. Slight concern about I don't know. I think they all look great on paper, but I think Lloyd Cushenberry is up and comer who has gotten great reviews from offensive linemen I know and respect. I think he's a big upgrade over Aaron Brewer, despite PFF's ridiculous rankings. I think he really wants to be great, has talked about that, came largely because of Bill Callahan. I think he's going to be a steady, much improved option on the offensive line who helps calm things down and it kind of sets a tone whether we feel it outwardly or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. And I still, with him specifically, and then particularly if Latham hits, what a difference that makes for Skoronski. Because tell me if you disagree. I thought Skoronski was okay last year, probably not to the level that you expected him to be when you pick him number 11 overall. Now, having said that, what was around him was not good. So how much of that was him? How much of that was the situation around him?
The appendectomy set him back.
Appendectomy set him back. I mean, there's a lot that went on last year. So the combination of Cushenberry to his right, Latham to his left, and Bill Callahan, like how much better is he going to be this year? I think is probably an under-discussed part of this offseason.
Yeah, I think significantly better. I feel really good about the offensive line center to left, right? Then the questions are center to right.
Yeah.
And that's where Callahan needs to work his magic. That's where I think the raw tools of Sadiq Charles or Radens and hopefully Petit Frere are enough to build the rest of the line to a get-by level with a strong left side will be sufficient for year one. And then next year, if those guys aren't good enough, that you can get better. Also, the health question, on that offensive line, you need a line that plays together for 17 games,
Yep.
ideally, or 14, ideally, whatever is reasonable to expect there. But you can't be putting a different line on the field every couple of weeks, which it felt like is what they were doing last year based on injuries. When you have your number one pick have an appendectomy week 2, it's hard to sustain anything. And, if something like that were to happen to Latham, knock on wood, they'd be in big trouble.
Your concern level if Petit Frere isn't ready to go by the start of camp?
I think he'll be ready to go by the
Okay.
start of camp. If he's not ready to go by the start of camp, I would be concerned. If it's, if they say it's a couple more days, that would be weird. First off, if it's a week, fine. If it's 3 weeks, that's big trouble.
I think he needs as many reps as he can possibly get. Now, look, I mean, they've got some other bodies out there. Like, let's say he's completely healthy. Are you totally convinced he's the starting right tackle?
I'm not totally convinced he's a starting right tackle. I'm totally convinced he's at the front of the line.
Okay.
To go. I would think he's at the front of the line. Duncan's second in line. Watson third in line. or maybe fourth in line with I don't know where the new guy, the other Cleveland guy they got fits in. But they've got a lot of depth there. And I think people are getting a little carried away with where all of these guys plug in. Some of these guys are getting cut.
Yes.
Some of these guys are getting cut and not on the team. Some of these guys are getting cut and they'll be on the practice squad. But like people are very high on Leroy Watson, who spoke very well for himself, is very dedicated to Callahan. But there may not be a spot on the roster for the guy.
Yep.
And then they're plugging him in at right tackle. I mean, he was playing very low during minicamp and OTAs when Petit Frere and Duncan weren't out there.
We'll try to keep PK's microphone together for the next segment. We'll have Jonathan Marchessault coming up next as well, new Nashville Predators forward, get his thoughts on his decision to sign with the Predators. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Nick Keyser, Paul Kuharski here with you on this Wednesday morning. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and say hello to the newest member of the Nashville Predators, Predators forward Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan, good morning. How are we doing?
I'm good. How about you?
We're awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. First off, welcome to Nashville. Excited to have you here and to see how you guys do this year. Jonathan, just as you were going through your situation, obviously, an emotional time for you with everything going on with Vegas. As you were identifying what you were looking for in your next team, what stood out to you about Nashville? What ultimately led you to the decision to become a Nashville Predator?
One of the things I think is the way they worked last year. I don't think like on paper everybody would have thought that they would make the playoffs, but the way they work and they played the right way, I think made them super successful. And kind of like that's kind of part of my style of game, just a hardworking mentality. So I kind of like that. And also, like I've played in a lot of nice cities, and I played in Tampa, I played in Florida, I played in Vegas, and I think Nashville is probably up there with them for the nice cities to play in. So that definitely it intrigued me.
What about what else the team was able to accomplish the other day? Obviously yourself and the pedigree that you bring, but also Steven Stamkos, who you're familiar with, Brady Shea, you've got Forsberg and O'Reilly and Yossi and Saros already here. What do you make of kind of the team that's now been constructed around you here in Nashville?
It's fun to be part of that. I mean, you want to be an organization that want to win, that want to spend to the cap, and give yourself the chance to win every year. And I think with the way they worked last year and the way they were, I think it really showed that there's a lot of character in that locker room. And now we added some pretty good players, I think. So I think it's going to make us a playoff team. And when you get to the dance, anything can happen.
Jonathan, you mentioned this in your first answer to Robby, but the reason why July 1st was considered such a banner day for the Predators is because it demonstrated that Nashville has become a destination for NHL players. How has the perception of Nashville evolved over the years among NHL players, both in terms of the organization itself and the city, the quality of life that you can have here?
Yeah, it's the lifestyle, right? Like I've heard just good things about the lifestyle here, and it's been something that I want to be in with my family. So I think it's one of those things, like the weather is nice, the living situation, the community over there is great. And you know what, for a guy that comes from the outside and you come to the rink in Nashville, and it's always a really, really tough building to play in because it's so livable and so fun with a great atmosphere. So that's something that is super fun as a hockey player to be in.
In your interview with TSN right after you signed the contract with the Predators, you said you felt that there wasn't a decent offer on the table from the Golden Knights to stay, and that you don't think they tried their best to keep you. Kelly McCrimmon, Golden Knights GM, responded to that later in the day, said, quote, couldn't be further from the truth, and that he would disagree with that. How far off was the Golden Knights' best offer compared to the deal you signed with the Predators?
Well, obviously I want to move on and stop talking about it, right? But one of the things that I didn't like, it was not like a traditional offer. They offered me something that it's called deferral, and that's pretty far off to me. So the end result was probably around the same amount, but it was along the years. So that's what I didn't like, and I don't think I deserved that deal at the time, and that's why I was not the kind of guy that wanted to like explode the bank or anything like that. I wanted a good deal for a team that wants to win. And you know what, like with Nashville is they didn't win yet, so they're eager to win. They want to win, and I think that's what I wanted to be part of.
It's a pretty unique story for a guy to have his first 40-goal season after he turns 30. coming off your career high 42 goals. What's your offseason training program like? How do you work on your shot and the finer details to keep improving as you continue to get older?
Well, right now it's about working out. Like, I'm really focused on my off-ice workout right now. And when I get back to the ice, normally more around end of July, early August, that's where I kind of push the pace and I get back to my shot and my routines and all that kind of stuff. I think I like being off the ice for a while. Obviously, when you go back, you feel terrible. But I mean, that's what is pretty nice about is when you we have more time than people think. Like day one of the regular season is October 10th, so we're still like pretty far off. So normally when I do like a full month of August and September, and after like we get into October, I think like when you get an age like me, I'm 33. Like training camp is part of the process to get back to where you are. Like it's not about the preseason games to be good or anything like that. It's about getting your lungs in the right spot and your mind in the right spot too. And and it's all about getting ready for the first game of the season.
Jonathan, you broke into the NHL with the Lightning. They gave you your first opportunity to play significant games. Obviously, you were there with Steven Stamkos. I understand the two of you talked as you were both deciding to sign with the Predators. Just how you know Steven Stamkos. We've talked a lot about the impact that he can have, but as someone who actually played with him, was in the dressing room with him, how much of an impact do you feel that Steven Stamkos, who in a similar situation to you, thought he might be in Tampa for his entire career, just like you thought you might be in Vegas for your entire career? You're both motivated. What sort of impact do you think that Stamkos could have on this dressing room?
Well, obviously off the ice, he has so much experience. He has so much, like, he's been through everything a hockey player wants to go through, you know, like gold medals, Team Canada, Stanley Cup winner, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's obviously it's presence. It's pretty nice to have around the room, but he's a unique player. He's one of the best every year. And for the reason of he can change the game at himself with one shot, you know, so it's like, he's a game changer. And I think that's something that is super good to have on your team.
Jonathan, we were going through, after the big day the other day, what a potential power play could look like. And we'll see what, Andrew Brunette and the coaching staff decides to do. But the idea of yourself, Stamkos, Forsberg, Yossi, O'Reilly, all on one power play unit together, what kind of stands out to you about that potential kind of setup there on the power play? And what do you think your biggest strength on the power play is?
Well, I'm a guy that is pretty good at finding open ice. I put myself in a situation that I'll get open and I have a quick release. So I just need the puck in a good spot and I normally can finish the job pretty well. So it's about being connected all together, I think. And I think if obviously it's going to need some time to figure out, but yeah, it could be definitely something really good and really positive for a group.
Jonathan Marchessault with us here on Robby and Rexrode. So, Jonathan, you obviously know what it takes to win. You're a Conn Smythe winner. You've won a Stanley Cup. A lot of guys on this team, from yourself to Stamkos to Schenn to O'Reilly, are Stanley Cup winners. What kind of stands out to you about just how hard that process is and what it takes to play your best hockey and win when the playoffs come around?
There's no secret to it, really. Your game needs to be a good spot when you come in. You don't want to come in off a 5-game losing streak or anything like that. I think you got to turn the corner around in February and play some good hockey. I think that's how it is. Get some wins, play some good hockey, play the right way, and after you got to keep that along. And a lot of things needs to happen to win. One of the things that is important is you need everybody to be healthy. It's something that can be a huge factor along the road. And I think you need to be healthy and play some good hockey and be all in sync together.
How proudly do you wear the King of the Misfits nickname, given the journey it took to win the Conn Smythe and to go where you took an expansive franchise?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's something that I was really proud of. We really started from nothing. and everybody said we would be so bad for a while, and we made it a playoff contender right off the bat. So it's something that I'm super proud. And within 6 years, we brought a Stanley Cup to the city. So I think that's something that I'm really proud of, and I'll be able to cherish the rest of my life.
Well, Jonathan, we're really excited to get you here in Nashville. Excited to see you guys play this year. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us this morning, and we'll talk to you soon. Congratulations on the deal.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Absolutely. Predators forward Jonathan Marchessault, our guest on Robby and Rexrode.
Not interested in deferrals.
Not interested in deferral. I thought that was pretty. First off, good question, Adam. Pretty interesting response he had there.
So in that sense, is he talking like the Stamkos reported deal that Tampa got? Like
it sounds like it. Yeah, that was my takeaway from it.
Reportedly, Tampa offered Steven Stamkos an 8-year contract with a $3 million per season cap hit in order to keep him. So it sounds like the Golden Knights were trying to do the same with Marchessault, and their
spread the money.
Yeah, their GM said when Marchessault approached them for 5 years, they were not interested because, according to him, the data did not support giving a 33-year-old a 5-year contract. And in most cases, that is the case. But Marchessault, has been an effective player through his 30s, as you just said to him, Paul. Scored a career high in goals in his mid-30s. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah,
and he's been a player who's been underestimated. He went undrafted. Broke into the league. And as he just said as well, took a team that nobody expected to be good and took them to a Stanley Cup final in their first year of existence and won the cup within 6 years.
And look, it's not an NHL thing. It's a pro sports thing that to get an older guy, you're probably going to have to pay back end years when maybe he's not going to be what he is right now. That's kind of the way the game works.
I know he's not an older guy per se, but isn't that what Shohei Ohtani did with the Dodgers? Didn't he take?
He took almost all deferral.
Yeah.
And look, Bobby Bonilla, it was just Bobby Bonilla day.
What a guy.
As Willie knows.
Yeah. And one of the big lawyers on Twitter says, everybody makes fun of the Mets for that. But it's better to pay the guy later than to pay him current.
Yeah.
Like you keep the money longer. Everybody wants to keep the money longer. We just talked to a guy who didn't want to defer the way Bonilla deferred. So everybody thinks Bonilla is a genius for getting paid later. But the fact of the matter is it would have been better for Bonilla if he got the money earlier.
Yeah. No, this could be really interesting. I mean, they've got the DNA here in terms of the way they set this thing up. It could be really good. I mean, if Marchessault is what he was last year, you're talking about a 40-goal, 70-point guy who is a proven playoff winner. Stamkos, 40 goals, 80 points. Forsberg had 48 goals last year. Like they got the makings of a dynamic offense, which, as we've talked about with the Titans, the more we could get some more offense around here, I think the better off we all
be. The
be.
question for me is the segment of the Nashville population that tunes into the Predators after football season.
Yep.
All right. They'll be interested early to see. All right, I'm going to check this out, see what it looks like with this new offense, potentially much higher scoring than they've been. Then do they stay? Do they make room for the Predators during football season? Because if they are, in fact, that team.
Yep.
Or do they still, our attention spans are so bad now. We don't follow multiple things at the same time, particularly in the South with football going on. That, to me, would be a transformation for the Predators if they could hold that audience in the fall.
Yeah, no.
And not just reacquire it in January.
Yeah, it's a great point. And look, I think I haven't seen any numbers yet. My guess would be that ticket sales after the other day have been very good. That would be my guess.
And what's up with Bally's?
Yeah, exactly.
That's another big one.
Watch the game. That would be nice as well.
Got to get that resolved.
Gentlemen, happy 4th of July. Hope you guys have a wonderful Independence Day.
Been a pleasure. During the 4th of July, when you're traveling around, don't block the box. And be sure to lock your locks.
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks. We're going to be back on Monday. We're off Thursday and Friday, so an extended weekend coming up.
Rexrode will probably be here, maybe.
We assume.
Once. He's been on vacation quite a bit.
He might show up to work. We'll see what
happens.
See if
he's still on the show, or the logo will have changed.
Could have. It might have happened.
Presented by Blue Chew.
That's going to do it for us today. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Jason, Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
See ya.